Hey y'all, I'm Elise Bargman. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a junior and I'm the student president of the Gender Sexuality Alliance here at St. Louis Park High School. This is the first episode in a series of videos about how teachers and other staff can make the school a more supportive and equitable space for LGBTQ students. Thank you so much for taking time to learn more about the queer community here. I know I speak for the rest of the GSA and the LGBT support group when I say that it means a lot. Alright, first things first, a disclaimer. Human gender and human sexuality are incredibly complicated, mostly because they permeate every aspect of our lives and they vary depending on culture and era. However, I want to keep these videos easy to understand and reasonably short, so as a result, parts of this series will be greatly oversimplified. Additionally, I want to say that the experiences and opinions expressed here are only the opinions of those who are working on this podcast, and as such should not be taken to represent the lives or views of all queer and trans people, or even everyone in the GSA. Just like people in any other community, LGBTQ people have incredibly diverse experiences and opinions. Please keep that in mind. Now for the LGBTQA acronym. This section is especially oversimplified, but I'll elaborate more in later episodes. Before we begin, in the background are the flags of these various identities, though the rainbow flag can be used as a general flag for the entire queer community. L. Lesbian. A woman attracted only to other women. G. Gay. Used for men who are attracted only to other men, but it is very commonly used by lesbians as well. A synonym for gay or lesbian is homosexual. This term is generally used in the realm of science and medicine, while gay and lesbian are the better terms for everyday usage. The opposite term is straight or heterosexual. This is a person who is only attracted to people of the opposite gender. About 95 to 98% of people are straight. This is a good time to note that lesbian is used almost exclusively as a noun, while gay and all the other terms are only used as adjectives and should never be used as a noun. For example, she is lesbian is not exactly grammatically correct, but it's acceptable, while she is a lesbian is completely grammatically correct. And then on the other hand, he is gay is completely grammatically correct, while he is a gay is not. If your gut is telling you that calling someone a lesbian feels weird, that's because it is. It feels odd in the same way that saying he is a Muslim sounds pretty disrespectful, but he is Muslim sounds considerably more respectful. Adjectives describe one aspect of something or someone, while nouns describe the entirety of that thing or person. Consciously or not, a lot of lesbians dislike the term lesbian for this very reason, and thus prefer the term gay. B. Bisexual. A person attracted to more than one gender. It is often shortened to bi. A very similar term that is frequently used is pansexual, commonly abbreviated as pan. I'll get into the nuanced differences in another episode, but for now you can pretty much treat them as more or less the same thing. T. Transgender. Someone whose gender doesn't match up with the sex they were assigned at birth. There are a lot of synonyms for transgender, but some of them should not be used. Here are the good ones. Transgender or trans. Usually we just shorten it to trans without the asterisk. So sometimes some places do put trans with an asterisk at the end. It's generally preferable to not do that because, I can maybe get into reasons for that in a later episode. Some of the bad ones include bad terms are the term transsexual or transvestite. However, some people use these words for their identities regardless. That's just a little bit less common. If you encounter someone who wants to be called one of those terms, call them that term because that's how they identify. But unless that happens, don't use those terms. The adjective not noun thing applies to transgender people too. So you'd say transgender, not transgendered, and a group of transgender people instead of a group of transgenders. This is a good place to introduce the opposite term, cisgender, someone whose gender does match up with the sex they were assigned at birth. This term represents about 99.5% of the population, give or take. Q. Queer. Once used as a slur, it has since been reclaimed by younger members of the community as a term of empowerment. Much like gay, it is used both as an individual identity and as an umbrella term for the community as a whole. As an identity, it is used to mean other, for a person that is part of the community but doesn't quite fit the cookie-cutter molds of the L or the G or the B or the T. It is used to give complex identities in the community a name. As an umbrella term, it basically means the same thing as LGBTQ. It is very popular among younger activists because it is more coherent and inclusive than LGBTQ, and not to mention fewer syllables. For example, Huffington Post Gay Voices was renamed Huffington Post Queer Voices a few weeks ago. However, due to the sensitive history of the word, there are also plenty of people who are hurt and/or offended by it, particularly when people who are not LGBTQ use the term. That being said, a non-black person using the N-word is a lot worse than a straight cisgender person using the word queer, just for comparison. The word fag, on the other hand, is definitely offensive and shouldn't be used by anyone outside of the realms of history and satire. Anyways, I for one prefer the term queer because that's what's used by activists, and I'm a part of the queer community, so I get a bit more leeway. So I'll probably be using the terms queer and LGBTQ interchangeably throughout this series. Last but not least, the A. Sometimes the acronym is written with an A at the end, LGBTQA. It means asexual, which more or less is someone who doesn't experience sexual attraction, and I'll elaborate more on this in another episode. The A used to mean ally, which is the term for a straight cisgender person who supports the LGBTQ community, which I assume includes you, unless you are LGBTQ. Allies are great and all, we appreciate all they do, but asexual people are an actual part of our community, so if anyone deserves the A, it's asexual people. Also, by including allies in the acronym, we imply they are part of the community, which by definition, they are not. Now, let's put it all together. Over the decades, people have come up with a lot of options for what to name our community. However, just because those names exist doesn't mean you ought to use them. In my humble opinion, the only ones that make sense to use are queer, queer and trans, LGBT, LGBTQ, and LGBTQA. Overall, though, I would recommend that teachers and staff use the term LGBTQ. That way, you're not offending anybody by using the word queer directly, but you're still including it as part of the acronym, which acknowledges that a lot of people do identify as queer. Additionally, this is the term used by Outfront Minnesota, the leading LGBTQ rights organization in the state. And with that, I want to say thanks again for watching, and I hope you stay tuned in for our second episode, which is about gender and biological sex. If you have any comments or suggestions or queries, don't hesitate to leave a comment below, ask me in person, or email me on my apps account. Thanks. Ciao.